as much going on. Just enough to interfere, you know?
I'm gonna get closer to you because I got this middle thing.
Okay.
No, that's okay. No, I just got
Sure.
this.
Okay, yeah.
I'm all right.
Oh, that's good, she's going. She won't be here tonight, though, she probably told you.
What's
Yeah,
that
she
bridge
told me.
over, is that called Durkey Creek or something like that?
Turkey Brook?
Durkey Brook? Is that the one they're tearing up?
Yeah, they're replacing the bridge, yep. Yep.
Dick Spalding?
I saw a sign when I was coming down Union, it said, you know, bridge closed. And then I forgot about that, and I'm sitting there going, where am I at? And I passed, so,
what I gotta
cause
do?
the only other bridge I knew of was at Busy Corner.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, I'm past Busy Corner.
Whenever you are ready, we have 6:30.
All right. Is the board ready?
Yes, sir.
We ready on the right, we're ready on the left. There's a song about that, if I'm not mistaken.
Stuck in the middle with you. Steelers wheel.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and open up tonight's meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody to the, October already, meeting of the Laconia Zoning Board of Adjustments. And with that, could we call the roll, please?
Roland Mayhew,
Here.
Michael Foot,
Here.
Steve Bogert,
Here?
Jane LaRoche,
Here,
Marcia Hayward.
Here.
And Gail Ober is absent with notification. We do expect Mr. Delvecchio.
Okay, with that, before we move to the next step, I'm gonna go ahead and get this going. Marcia, would you please just be on the board for Gail? And that'll mean the whole night long. Okay? Thank you. And Jane, will you stand in for Mike until
absolutely.
Mike comes in?
Yes.
Okay? And whatever application we're on, you'll complete that application,
Okay.
and then he can, it depends on where we're at. I'll let you know, because some of these are like 3 applications long, or 2 applications long, so it would only be correct if you finished the application.
I understand.
Okay. So, with that, we'll go ahead and get going. We had roll call, acceptance of the minutes. Everybody get an opportunity to review the minutes.
I move we accept the minutes as written.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the motions as written.
Second.
We have a second discussion of that. There being none, all those in favor? Yes. Motion passes. Minutes are done. Extensions. We'll move right into it. 664 Scenic Road Special Exception Extension. And is the applicant here? Please come forward.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Back again, Chris Dupree for the Aqua Entities. Let's see, if I've got my dates right, this has been a continued application several times for the extensions, which were good through July of this year. So the request is in for extension through January 31, 2022. You know, the history of this project is all pretty well spelled out in the narrative. From a status standpoint, our planning board approvals are set to expire at the end of this month. We will be filing a application for extension for one final time with the planning board. So we would ask for this extension to make sure that we can get to the planning board.
Okay. And what would be the
Which
date?
one are we doing?
664.
There are three extension
Oh, Aqua.
applications.
Oh, okay, I've got these three.
Yep.
All right, sorry about that.
No, no worries.
The first three are actually kind of all tied, they're all the
We have
664, and then to the Fletcher Lane, 63 to 99. The next two are also basically one project.
All right. And what would be that date? This
They
is
would
good.
all extend to January 31, 2022.
1/31/22. Okay. Well, all right, so that covers 664. You want to go ahead and, shall we, are they all packaged under the same 63.99?
They are.
All right, let me go ahead and open those up then. I'm gonna also open up 63-99 Fletcher Lane Special Exception, PDF, Special Exception, request to allow multifamily in the SRF, Shorefront Residential Zone. And then we have another one for 63-66 Fletcher Lane Extension, the request for the area variance in the SRF zone. So, anybody have any questions of the applicant? They're looking to have their extension done through 1/31/22. Any, okay. Go ahead and have a seat. I'll open it up to the public and ask,
You don't need public hearings, they're just extensions.
okay, well, I give an opportunity to
They
people
certainly can,
to,
but you don't have to.
someone might object to,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to open it up to the public and ask anybody from the public who wish to speak for or against this application, please come forward and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against these applications. Therefore, I bring it back to the board. Any other questions? There being none, any final comments from the applicant?
Nope.
He's indicating no. So, what we'll do is we'll make a motion to vote on these individually, but not as a single. The same vote can work for all three, but we just gotta signify them separately. Okay? So, with that being said, the first one we're gonna vote on is 64 Scenic Road Special Exception to extend.
I make a motion to extend.
Okay?
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion to extend, we got a second. It meets all the qualifications, therefore, of the city regs on being applied at time and everything, so there's no reason, Salt, there's been no major differences done to the application, and therefore, after this round, they'll be going to the planning board again anyway, so, all right? So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first one passes. All right, the second one is 63-99, Fletcher Lane Special Exception, to allow multifamily in this shorefront residential area. Need a motion?
Make that motion to extend.
Okay, we got a motion to extend.
Second?
Second. That also includes the same fact that it met all the standards for the regulations, blah, blah, blah. And we move on. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the third one is 63-99 Fletcher Lane, a variance, area variance in the shorefront residential. They need an extension. Need a motion.
Motion to extend.
Got a motion to extend. Do we have a second? We
I'll
have a
second.
second. And the same verbiage again. And with that, all those in favor? We shall move it. Pass. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You have a very good day. All right, next up is 29 Sweetbriar Way, variance extension request. There's also two of them here. Are they under the same folks?
They're not under the same applicants, Mr. Chairman, but they were approved together, and I think it's appropriate that they be discussed together.
Okay, we can,
In other words, when the board granted each variance, the board granted them sequentially as well.
oh, that's fine. We'll read them both in. We'll vote separately. And so the second one, all right, this one's for first, is 2019-001, extension 29 Sweetbriar Way, if I pronounce that correctly. And the next one is 2019-0002, extension 10 Sweetbriar Way. Applicant, please.
I don't know if the board remembers this one, but this was a two unbuilt lots in Rosedown Village, and what had happened is the other units had built more than their fair share of buildable area. So the board graciously listened to our arguments and allowed a variance of 20.5% on this particular 1001. And then on the second application, the board approved it to up to 21.5. The former, when it was approved, the lot coverage was 30, but then it became more. So this is what the board already granted. Besides that, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this board was kind enough to grant extensions in March on these. And I'm pleased to say that 29 Sweetbriar, the number 6.4, is set to close this week. There was a previous buyer who fell out because they couldn't get their house built this year, but there's a new buyer that is actually going to close this week and would build a house this coming year. And then the second application, number 5, which is number 2019-2, Mr. Noonan purchased that property from the prior owner, Auxilium LLC, and he was actually ready to roll, had everything lined up, and his excavator said he couldn't do the work. So he's all set to go next spring too. So I think this will be the last time you see us, and there'll be homes here. So.
Okay. What would be the extension dates for these? The same?
To April 30, 2022.
Is there any way to make that longer? Because, that's going to be
Uh,
hard to get.
No, that's outlined in the RSAs.
Okay. Is it like April 30th or something?
No, it's 6 month.
So
So it would be
from
April.
today?
You get a 2-year in the first go around, and then 6-month extensions.
So you'd be good to April 30.
Now, if they pull a building permit, that's okay. That's the end of it, right?
And shovels in the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's really, and if there's any questions, of course I'll answer them, but that's pretty much it.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant on either application? There being none, if you give me a second, I'm going to open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against these applications. Please come forward at this time. Introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one wishes to speak for or against these extensions, therefore I'll bring it back to the board. Any other questions? Any closing comments?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Therefore, I'll bring it back to the board, close it to the public. It seems like everything meets the documents, nothing's really changed, and life goes on. They're fortunate now, we got them sold, and there'll be some new buildings and new tax for the city, yay. We might get a raise.
Yeah, right.
I want double.
I'm glad there's levity involved.
So, with that, any discussion, anybody else? Like to entertain a motion for 2019-0001, which was a variance extension request,
For 29 Sweetbriar Way.
29 Sweetbriar Way.
I'll make that motion for an extension.
I'll second.
And let the record indicate April 30th, 2020. Same thing, it met all the qualifications and stuff, so no major changes. Any other discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That one passed. 5-0. And then, I'd like to have for 2019-002, extension 10, Sweetbriar Way.
I'll make a motion to extend this variance till April 30th, 2022.
Second.
Have a motion, second, same verbiage to go with that one, please. Any other discussions? There being none, all those in favor?
Right?
Okay,
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you
Have a
very
great
much.
evening. Thank you.
good luck.
South Main,
We're moving right along.
Nice cover.
Main Street.
Okay. The next item is a continued from the last meeting, application 2021-0047, variance 674 Main Street.
Good evening.
Applicant, one second, applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 23533, minimum residential unit density to permit the conversion of the second floor to 2 residential units. Introduce yourself for the record and please.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Ferrante. I'm owner of 674-676 Main Street. It's actually right on the corner of Main Street, next door to the new venue, The Cake, the old Sunday Salon. My goal is to convert the second floor that used to be a second floor of a salon into 2 residential units, a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom, and maintaining the first floor as the commercial space as is. There currently is a residential unit that is a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor, so it does blend well into the current structure. I'm just looking for that variance so I can get the permit to complete these units.
So it'll be 2 units on the second floor, and you got currently 1 unit or 2 units on the top?
1 unit on the 3rd floor, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Where will the residents be parking their cars?
Right now, there are enough spaces for 4 parking spaces. That would be part of a further variance I would probably need to get for access. I'm also working with the owners of the Cake venue to possibly purchase the diagonal area that's not mine, have a full easement right now. Currently, the residents are parking on the property via the entrance to the left of the Cake and to the right of my building. That, I believe that you guys have a plot plan in the file. As you can see, I do own a majority of the alleyway space, which would be used for the parking.
Now, this being in the downtown area, they're also privy to the other parking spaces too, that are in the public lots?
City garage.
There are no requirements for additional parking if they
I
do
didn't-
not add square footage. He's not adding square footage. So the parking overlay district exempts him from creating more spaces. However, I think he has,
It would behoove him, because it'd be a
Right.
better
There
selling
is-
item.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing issue with the town. I know I'm partners with some of the other people that are addressing the parking issue, so I don't want to add fire to that flame.
No, I was just, didn't want people to think that this would be a conditional thing
Oh,
to
no, sir.
happen. That's why I was trying to make that point. I didn't.
And I agree with him, that would be a much larger issue if we were building new units.
Yeah.
Actually, if anything, reducing that from a commercial space should probably reduce the need for parking.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, please.
What's the square footage of that single unit on the third floor?
On the third floor, that is about 1,100 square feet.
Yes.
And each of the apartments, you want to make two on the second floor, what would be the square footage of each of those?
It's about an 850, 750 split. I think a little bit more in favor, I think it's closer to the 9 on the larger one.
So the request is because of the density, is why he wants this variance, right? Because the density is supposed to be 1,000 square feet.
actually, the 1,000 square feet does come into play here. But the real issue is that it's, because he's going from one residential unit to 3, that makes it multifamily, so then he needs the variance for density. The lot is still fairly small.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant at this time?
I do.
Yes, sir.
When I'm looking at these existing conditions, and I guess I'm slow in my purview here.
It's okay.
They're
Mike,
going-
You were here early.
Don't want all that unnecessary discussion. All right, I see where you're at here. So there's a lot of smaller rooms in there that are being pulled out.
Yes, sir. It was used as an old salon space, mostly, I think, massages, nails. So there's a lot of very tiny rooms that would, accumulate to make much larger rooms. Most of it is interior work.
Okay, any other questions? There being none, if you'd have, just give us a second, let me open it up to the public. I'd like to open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time, introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. We'll bring it back to the board. Don't want to rush nobody.
No.
If it seems like I'm rushing, it's just, we're on a flow here.
Excited. No, I don't have any questions.
No questions? Any closing comments?
I just think it would be a really good addition with the development that's happening in Laconia. I'm a mortgage broker by trade. My office is in Meredith. I live in Laconia. So I know of the constant housing problem as far as fair market rents. The goal of this is to offer affordable rents, everything being under $1,500 a month, to kind of help spur that kind of catalyst we need to get downtown growing again.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll close it to the public. You may have a seat. Discussion?
Seems reasonable to me, repurposing, space that, is not currently being utilized as its former commercial right in town there, and 2 more apartments, makes a lot of sense.
I've always liked that type of situation where you had a store down below and a
Yeah.
couple of apartments above and stuff like that. That's, in a downtown area like that, that always, to me, gave vibrance to the city, because you never know what underneath will grow from it. And as people come and go, and if they got some jingling in their pocket to spend, then they're right there to be able to spend it, and someone there to help them to spend it, you know, so that's what we look forward to, you know.
In-
At least that's my impression.
I guess I should ask this, so I'm seeing this as residential apartments, not Airbnb,
No,
like that, residential apartments, is what we're looking at.
right. They don't necessarily qualify for that. You'd need 5 years, you need blah, 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 A, B, C, D, and so. Any other discussion? Like to entertain a motion then?
I'll make a motion to accept the variance from ZO 2021-0047 on 674, 676 Main Street. And this is looking at, we're in the urban commercial district, and we're looking at adding 2 more units of housing. And I believe that granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. It's downtown, and we're looking to increase our number of our residents living in our downtown community. So the spirit of the ordinance is observed because of the lack of housing here. So it's pay attention to that. And it would be substantial justice because of increased usage of the building, paying a tax, and once again, providing 2 more residential uses. And that would not diminish the surrounding properties. In fact, it could help by having more people living in the area that would utilize the services of the businesses that are around it. And the proposed use is a reasonable use because of our master plan goals.
And the hardship is due to the fact that the building is what it is, and it's in a location of the downtown area, which limits its ability to expand outwards, so it has to stay within the footprint of its own building. And they are working hard at adjusting the parking so they can add parking spaces within the area, so
Yeah. Well,
is that what you're saying?
that's what I was saying.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We got a second. Discussion of the motion.
Was Marcia? Okay, thank you.
There being none, all those in favor of the motion?
Right.
Passes 5-all. Enjoy. Oh, do, 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 do. All right, now we move into new stuff. All right. First application tonight, new application is going to be 2021-0050. It's a variance, 491 White Oaks Road. It's a variance application from Article 6, Section 235-35A, front setback to permit the construction of a 14 by 36 addition and a walkway to the existing garage. I'm going to go ahead and read the second one in because it has pertinence to the, no, it doesn't, it's standalone. Standalone. So, the applicant's here, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and tell us how we might be of help.
Awesome. Good evening. My name is Richard Bodie. I just moved to town in the end of January.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, tell us what you want to do.
I bought a small home. I think it's on the document there, a little less than 900 square feet, give or take a little bit. And I'd like to put a small addition on the side, adding about 500, 550 square feet to make it a little bit more usable.
So that's the 14 by 36 you're
Yes, sir.
talking
Right
about?
along the side of it. It kind of matches, if you're looking at, from the road side, it kind of matches, there's like a dormer, I think maybe that's called, on the left-hand side, and so kind of matching it on the right-hand side.
Now, this walkway, proposed walkway slash patio,
Right.
is that uncovered or covered?
Uncovered.
Uncovered. Okay. If I'm looking at this, is this whole house in the front setback?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we're not creating anything other than, you're gonna stay within the lines of the house
Yes,
with
sir,
it? You're-
exactly. So the
I mean,
front-
other than the part coming out,
Exactly.
but on the sides,
Right,
it's
so
gonna be.
across the front, Karen, if you could, by the way, hello, good to see you again. I think I'm about maybe 40 feet from the road, 30, 35 feet.
He's approximately 30 feet from the edge of pavement.
Right.
You also should have a proposed image,
Right.
kind of a
So
mirror.
So it's matching that same line in setback from,
Okay.
kind of balancing out the dormers that are coming forward. And
The other houses in
I
that
added
area
the
are thin.
patio or the concrete work on there just because that was within the 75, the new requirement of 75 seats,
So
so.
what's the variance he needs?
The other houses in that line are all about the same
So
distance.
whose
Exactly.
house is this?
Yeah, there's a series of them that are all approximately the same
That's not
distance
his.
from the edge of pavement.
Sure.
They would all sit in the front setback, it would be in the same situation.
And the home basically is parallel to the road, give or take a couple inches.
To understand what he wanted to do, but,
So this house is not yours?
That's a garage.
That's your garage?
Yeah, the
Okay.
whole, in your drawing, all the yellow is
Yeah.
my current property.
it is,
Right.
okay.
Kind of filling in that space, actually just taking over some driveway space to be able
Okay.
to put the addition.
I think that I looked at that house, I think.
Oh, I know Jeff Cities.
It used to be when I was a child.
Oh, really?
It'd be tiny.
There you go.
No, it wasn't
We
that
found a
house.
bunch of bottles in that front yard, young lady.
I was very young, no bottles
Hey,
back then.
A little
no.
bit of booze doesn't have an age to it.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? There being none, if you give me a minute.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application, therefore I bring it back to the board. Any other questions?
I went up and took a look at that home today and
Is it a question or is this discussion?
discussion,
All right, hold off on discussion, please.
all right?
There being no further questions, any closing comments, sir? Okay, with that, I'll bring it to the board for discussion and close it to the public. Now,
I went up and took a look at that place today, and what they're doing, and it looks very reasonable to me. There's no extension further into the zone to the front of the road. And I think it's perfectly possible to give, 900 square feet is not a lot of house to be living in, and this is going to improve their situation.
I think for the where it's built and to add on to what you're saying, that by it going towards the side setback with the thing, it had more than enough room on the side setback, so that only encroachment was the whole fact that the whole house is in the front setback. I mean, so there's not much, it's not one of those things where, like, you know, if I had to find a hardship in this situation, the hardship would be the fact that it's all there, because in order to fix this to where it wouldn't need a variance, you would have to pick the whole house up and everything
Right.
and move the whole shooting match.
Yeah, the house was built before the zoning laws came into effect.
Right. So, if there's no other discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll entertain a motion to grant the variance from Article 6, Section 235, 35A to 491 White Oaks Road. This addition is this addition is onto a smaller house that was built before the zoning ordinances were in and before we had RR2. It's not going to extend any closer to the road. It's going to add more living area to what is already a small house. And that would be a good reason for it. So it would not be contrary to the public interest. It's not going to affect anybody else around it. Once again, the spirit of the ordinance is observed by creating a little more living space than what had previously been there. Substantial justice is that you make your house more livable and then can increase the value to the house and make it once again a better place to live. Would not diminish the value of the surrounding properties, and the hardship being that, once again, this house was built before we adopted this zoning of RR2. And that is also, this 1945 house is also the reason for the hardship, and that's what it allow it for me. I guess I can repeat myself again, but.
Yes. Might add in there that it's all in the front setback, and so no matter what he did, there was no good resolution to not having to go for a variance. Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second? Discussion? There being none, all those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Enjoy your addition.
Are you guys open to some feedback? Are you open to some feedback?
Always.
Oh, so I'm a professional builder. Just moved up from Concord from here because I picked up 2 contracts in the area last summer, fell in love with the area. And I said to my wife, we're moving. So we moved up in, and I've been doing this for a long time. My business is 33 years old and kind of a little bit smaller these days. And this is the first time in my career, having been in this forum a number of times, that somebody from the board came to the house and looked. Now, I happened to be at home at the time. I was loading the truck and unloading, and I hear my wife speaking out, talking, and I thought she was talking to herself at first. And first time in my entire life where somebody actually had enough interest to come out and actually see what I was doing. So kudos to you, Roland. And secondly, give this woman a raise. She's awesome. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the
All right,
comments.
thanks, everybody. Good night.
Make sure that makes the minutes. We don't get compliments that often.
We'll put that in bold.
Especially the last part.
Okay, Next application is 2021-0051 SE. That means special exception. It's 191 White Oaks Road. Applicant is requesting a special exception for Article 7, Section 235-41A to allow an accessory dwelling unit. The applicant here, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and tell us how we might help you.
I'd like to second what was said about Karen. I'm doing this from upstate New York, and she's been phenomenal, tremendously supportive and helpful. So my name is Gail Buell. I'm the agent for my dad, who's Colin Robertson here, and we are hoping to have an exception for an apartment unit, which has actually been rented for the past 4 years. My dad had no idea that he was supposed to jump through some administrative hoops, and he rented out the apartment very happily, and people have been living there. And only recently, when he plans to sell the home to the current renter in the main house, she's been there for 6 years, she's going to be buying the home, and the appraiser from the bank said, "I'll just need the certificate of occupancy, please, for the apartment." And so she called me, and I said, "The what?" And so after calling Mackenzie in codes and talking to Karen, we discovered that the proper paperwork had never been done. My dad had a building permit for the garage itself, and he upstairs built an office area that he utilized for a number of years. And when they moved out about 10 years ago to live in our farmhouse, which had been remodeled, and started renting the main house, after a number of years, the realtor said, "You know, somebody would really love to live in that space above the garage. Why don't you turn it into an apartment?" And so he added a kitchen, and there was an apartment, voila. And I guess he thought, we've discussed this many times in the past month, how could this possibly have happened? He thought that original building permit, when he built the garage and put the office upstairs and was using it for a number of years, he thought that sufficed, and clearly he was wrong, because it's an accessible dwelling unit. So that's why we're here, for a special exception.
After the fact.
After the fact, exactly. Yes, incredible.
You aren't the first person in Laconia to do that.
Okay, well, that's reassuring, thank you. Yeah,
And probably won't be the last.
okay, yeah.
So,
Well, I'm just so thankful that there's some sort of methodology for catching it, so to speak, so that people can become aware of what they need to be doing, you know, for the administrative work, so. Anyway, that's the story.
so does this thing meet all the
The square footage and
requirements
everything
that,
for an
yes,
accessory dwelling, yes.
okay.
Yeah, it's 26 by 28, so it's 728 square feet, and it's, has to be less than 750 square feet. So fortunately, that was a godsend.
Will we have to have it inspected and all of that,
Yes,
or?
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, my understanding from codes is that if the board approves the ADU, then tomorrow morning, we go to see the codes people with more paperwork, and they'll send Joe out. Joe will inspect the unit to make sure it was all done according to code, that the windows are egress and, you know, all the important fire alarms, safeties, all that stuff. He'll inspect it and give an after-the-fact additional building permit, not in addition to the building permit my dad did when he built the actual garage. So, yeah, it's kind of a multi-layered process, right, Karen? Yeah,
Quite a few layers there.
yeah, yep.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time?
I just want to make a comment.
Sure.
I don't feel left out. I was at your house today, too.
Oh, how nice. How nice. It's a
He's
beautiful
like Santa
location,
Claus,
isn't
but
it?
different.
Yeah. That's great. It's a nice spot.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing that Karen pointed out to me too, is that this doesn't change the exterior, it doesn't change anything about anything. There's just people living in this nice apartment, large space above the garage. And they'd be very sad if they had to move out. So,
Yes.
yes, sir.
Can I ask, how long ago was this apartment put in? When was it? made
Well,
into?
4 years ago, so
4 years
it was
ago,
about,
sorry.
yeah, 4.5 years ago when it was completed, as per the Brenda from the rental agency. She said, we sure have a lot of people who are looking for apartments, and, you know, you're not living there anymore, and it's a beautiful space above the garage. Why don't you just put in a kitchen and we could rent it? So that was about 4.5 years ago, and the contractor added the kitchen, and it's been rented since then for the past 4 years. Yep, there you go. March of 2017, says Julie, who's buying the house and now knows everything about it. Yep.
Any other questions at the moment? There being none, if you'd pardon me for a second, ma'am, I'm going to open this up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. I bring it back to the board for questions. Now, I have a question for staff. That's gonna get it re-inspected for all aspects to make sure.
As part of the after-the-fact permit, there'll be the standard building inspections.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Would this be something I want to add to the end of the motion as conditions to make sure it's properly done,
You
or?
could add your standard condition to get all other local permits.
And that it passes?
Right.
Details.
Well, that's where it's at, is in the details. Okay, like to entertain a motion. All right,
I'll make a motion that we, and I'll try and be good about this too.
you want me to run it?
Ken?
All right, I'll go ahead and make the motion for the special exception at 191 White Oaks Road, special exception for Article 7, Section 235-41 to allow an accessory. I'd like to go ahead and approve this application based on the following criteria. The use is requested specifically authorized in this chapter, and it is. The requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair the pedestrian safety on this road. White Oaks Road is a traveled road. It wouldn't add any more or less traffic to the road, so therefore it wouldn't have any undue traffic. The requested use will not overload any public water, drainage, or sewer. I didn't ask, but is this public or water, or is it a well?
Private septic and water.
So with it being all private and everything, we wouldn't need to have any overload on any of our public. D, the requested use will not create excessive demand of the police or fire department because the building's there already, so the use is the use. And E, any special exception for use is set forth in this chapter are fulfilled. All the special provisions have been fulfilled or will be fulfilled as soon as all the inspections have been done. The request F, the requested use will not create hazard to the health, safety, or general welfare of the public, nor be detrimental to the use of or out of the character with the adjacent neighborhood. This would not infringe on anybody else's rights as far as this property is contained in itself. It's already in use as a house, and the ADA has been approved by the state for us to be able to do such as this for the property, so it would not create any hazards. G, the proposed location is appropriate for the requested use. The property looks like it has the appropriateness for this setup. It has enough green space around it and stuff, so it would be a nice residential home for someone to have with this type of situation. And H, the request use is consistent with the spirit and the intent of this chapter and the master plan. It is in spirit with the chapter, as the state has approved these ADAs for special conditions and stuff like this. So I'd like to add one condition, that all the permits be followed through with and make sure they pass and all that. And that's my motion.
Second.
We have a second discussion of the motion.
Nope.
There being none, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, motion passes. Have a good night. Okay, next on the agenda is 2021-0052, variance 64 Hillcroft Road. A variance from Article 6, Section 235-35B, side and rear setbacks to permit the construction of a two-car garage. Applicant, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening, Board. My name is Arthur Rozaki. My home is about 1,000 square feet, and I'm requesting to put a two-car garage on the left side of the property. My house is at an angle, so it makes it a little different than the way it's built on the land. So the request is to put a two-car garage on the left side of the home.
Is that the west or the east side? There's a sunrise.
I'm not sure.
It's really the
West.
North?
North side. Looks like the north
So there it
side.
is. Perfect. Right into 2 feet on the boundary.
How close are you to the boundaries?
Please?
How close are you to your lot lines?
That's why we're requesting the variance. It's not long enough or wide enough to put it there. Because there is a home on the left-hand side currently. We wouldn't be blocking anything, we wouldn't be obstructing anything on the house on the left, putting the garage there, or the home across the street in the back.
Yeah, I went up there today to take a look,
Okay.
and the problem I had is a lot of the places don't have numbers on it,
Okay.
and I didn't see a number 17, so,
Well, when you went past the burning station,
yeah.
and on the left-hand side, it was the
I know
third
where,
house
I know
down.
where the street is,
Okay.
but I started down the street, and every once in a while, there'd be a number, a little square or a tree or something with a number on it, but I didn't see anything near where 17 was, so I couldn't find your house.
64 was on
64,
the
okay,
house.
Because we have a 17 coming up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so is there a lot of activity down there, a lot of housing? or-
It's a dead-end road.
Yeah,
There's probably 8, maybe 10 houses as you go further down the street on both sides.
There's no way you can build something back here, because that's all your land over there?
Either side would become an issue because of the distance between the property line and the house.
I was thinking about in here.
That would be,
Not accessible, or?
it would be difficult to get to because there is a bit of an incline there, and then we'd have to, and then that would obstruct the view on the house on the left to the water. That would definitely obstruct the
Got it.
view. And currently, we park on the left side now, currently. On the right side, there's a physical fence there that would make it even more difficult on the right side.
Is that road closed off in the wintertime?
No, no.
It's open?
Yeah. It's part of an association, so
Private.
we're responsible to maintain the road and plow the road and things of that nature.
Well, it brings it right in close, so you can't even drive a lawnmower around the corner of it.
Well, it does bring it close, but in looking at the photo of it,
Mm.
and we haven't really heard anything negative from the abutter themselves, and when I open it up, I'll ask if they would like to speak, but yes, it is close, but from looking at the house, and it looks like half, at least 40% of the house is outside the the building area. And no matter what you did, that garage is gonna go, if it was even placed on the right side, you're gonna run into the same issues you did on the left side. And I'm not sure if you gain anything by trying to move it left or right or whatnot.
It clearly would be more approachable if the house wasn't built at an angle like that, which
Yes.
makes it,
Or if it went with the angle of the property, I mean,
right,
that,
exactly,
it
exactly.
kinda
which-
went opposite of the way the property is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kinda,
I don't know
weird.
why, but yeah, that's exactly the issue.
so, anyway. Any other questions of the applicant at this time? There being none, give me a second, I'm gonna open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Therefore, I bring it back to the board. Any further questions?
No.
Any closing comments?
Just that I appreciate your time and consideration on this. It's a small home. The winters can be a little challenging sometimes, and be able to put the car in the garage and some other things in there would, would be helpful. Obviously, it increases the value of the property as well, too.
Do you live there full-time, Arthur?
My son does, I'm on.
Please come back up to the podium.
So, my son lives there full-time with me. He works for UPS, and I travel a lot for work, so I live there, but it's not as often be there as often as I would like to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I'm gonna close it to the public unless there's another question that might have fed off of that past question. No? Then I'm gonna close it to the public, bring it to the board for discussion. It falls into one of those wacky things, and I think that's a lot of the hardship with this thing is the fact that it's built opposite, almost, I don't even know what the word is to use for that, how it's built in
It's so
in
sad.
alignment with the property. It was like there was no property line, and then they built houses, and then they applied property lines after the fact or something, is the way it looks.
it's oddly set on the lot, it's also an extraordinarily undersized lot. The lots up there this is just about a third of an acre, where the minimum lot size now for the RR1 is 2 acres.
Yeah.
So it's extraordinarily undersized.
Reminds me of Christmas Island area. Any other discussion? Like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion for variance application Z02021-0052. We're looking for a variance of Article 6, 235-35B for a two-car garage here at 64 Hillcroft Road in County of New Hampshire. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because it's all within the lot itself. Said the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because it would allow the enhancement of the home and give room for indoor storage of cars and a little bit, I love that extra room. Substantial justice, you'd be able to add a garage to, this is just a, I guess this is just a single-story garage, this is nothing that's a second story.
I forgot to ask. We can stop and reopen it, and we can ask that question, because
Lightly,
that's a
'cause-
very good question,
Because it's kind of
Consider what we
pertinent
just
to the
passed.
situation.
correct.
Yes. So therefore, upon the board's advice, I'm going to reopen this up for a further question of the applicant.
So in speaking with the builder, he actually suggested doing a loft for additional storage up there. So we were considering doing that, if it was acceptable.
Now, this added loft, is it going to be storage, or is it going to be additional living space?
Strictly storage,
Okay.
Strictly
See, I like to get that for the record.
yes.
Straight walls on the loft, or are they going to be just like a big triangular angled room?
I'm envisioning this, if that answers the question, with just a wide open area. Probably a window or two.
So it's going to be high enough walls to put windows into, so it's going to be two-story. That's what it sounds like. If you're going to put windows above,
The windows would be at the end,
oh, and the gable
and
sides?
not necessarily the side.
Okay.
That's
All
not the
right.
thinking, it was just at the end,
Okay.
so you can see out at some point.
Or see in when you get to the top of the stairs?
So we know what we're doing?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
And
Any other questions before I close it? There being none, I'm gonna close it, bring it back to the board. You like to continue your motion?
Sure. And so, number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice, allow them to add a garage and some storage space upstairs. And it will not diminish the value of the surrounding properties, and it'll give a chance to improve the home as it exists now. Unnecessary hardship is the size of the lot and the way that the building was originally built on the lot. And it reduces the amount, the options for adding on to one's house.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Discussion of the motion.
Take it.
Okay.
Okay.
He points to me, I point to you.
Ain't it always a way?
I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle, I'll do it.
Now she's in the middle.
That's right.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Did you figure out who seconded it?
We gave it to Roland.
Okay, there you go.
All in favor.
Roll on.
All those in favor?
Every-
All right. Motion passes. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Make sure you get all your permits and stuff in line with them before you start pounding nails, please. Yes.
And I would caution to pay attention, because we're right within 2 feet of the property line. I would definitely pay attention to proper layout and measurements.
I will make sure the builder follows all the necessary rules.
Because there's been history in the past of, not you, but in other areas where people now have cutoffs on their garages, which wouldn't have been if, so make sure your builder understands that that thing could possibly come down. So,
Measure twice.
yes, measure twice. All right?
Will do. Thank you.
There you go. Now,
Two more.
here we, no, well, basically one more,
I'm gonna be putting
Well,
because they're
this is
both the same address.
Right, variance and a special exception.
Yes.
space between Hazel and me.
Okay, next, I'm gonna read them both in, so we can discuss both. Is there a particular one we need to vote, does one pertain to the other?
You need the variance first for the detached, and then, because the variance is for a detached accessory dwelling unit, so you would need that first, and then you could go, then you would look at the special exception for the accessory dwelling unit itself.
Okay. So, I'm gonna go ahead and read them both open, and that way you can talk about both of them at the same time, and then we'll vote on them separately. All right, so the first application is 2021-0054 variance. Application requests a variance to Article 7, Section 23541A, subset 4, to allow a detached accessory dwelling unit. The second is application 2021-0055SE, 17 Hillcroft, did I say it right that time? Good. Road, it's a special exception for Article 7, Section 235-41A, to allow a detached accessory dwelling unit. They're both to allow?
You need the variance because to allow a detached accessory dwelling unit, the lot has to meet or exceed the lot size, and this lot is just under the minimum 2 acres required, which is where the variance would come in, to allow the detached.
Okay? All right. Please, discuss the variance and then the special exception.
Good evening. So, sorry you couldn't find our house. I do have the numbers right on the front. It's hard to see though, like, because there's a lot of trees in the way. And then it opens up, but it's the first log cabin on the right. We're asking for a detached 16 by 28. We're gonna match kinda the cabin that we have. The reason why we want to detach is for my parents. My dad has dementia, and I'm gonna be taking care of them. I'm a nurse. And the reason why we want the detached is because we have 2 bathrooms on the back, the well's on the right, the septic is on the other side. And right behind our lot is long, but right behind we can put their place of 1 bedroom and connect the sewer, the septic, the well, and the electric right to the main house.
Same thing.
That's what we're trying to do.
Okay,
Question.
please.
Your sewers or your septic is already gonna be big enough to be able to?
It is. It's a
design is correct.
1,250, it's a 3-bedroom, we have a 2-bedroom, and this would just be a 1-bedroom for them.
Good, good. I was gonna ask that myself, so good, good.
we
And your
meet-
well's big enough to
and the
cover
well-
too?
Yep. Yep, and the well, and then we have the electric, the panel and everything's already, it's big enough too. They said they could do a sub-panel and just put it for that,
Wow,
which is.
You got lucky.
It worked out good, because I live in Barnstead right now. My husband loved it once we built our log cabin. But my parents live with us in an apartment, and they live downstairs, and he begged me to sell my house, so I put it on the market, and it sold in a day, so we're closing November 23rd.
On your Barnstead house?
Yes.
Is that congratulations?
It is.
Good.
We love it up here, but I love it. I started a soup kitchen, and I do all kinds of things there, so it's gonna be difficult, but new adventures. But I need somewhere for my parents and to come with us.
Please.
What is the size of your lot right now?
1.78 acres.
Ah, it is right under, isn't
Yeah.
it?
We have a 1/4 acre, but it's across the street, so.
Oh, welcome, Mike. Did you make it in before or after I started this one?
No, I just snuck in minutes ago.
Okay. Well, Jane's gonna finish up, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay.
So,
Please.
so this ADU we're looking at is 16 by 28, is that what I'm seeing?
Correct.
So for a total of 448
Yep.
square feet of extra living.
Yep.
Oh, there was a picture of what's inside.
Plus a 6 by 28 porch on it.
Yeah. The porch is gonna kind of match the main house. My mom wanted a porch too.
Sure.
Gotta have a porch.
Yeah.
Gotta have some place to have that cup of coffee in the morning.
You've been looking at my porch.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? For either the special exception or this variance? The variance is because of the lot size is too small, and then the special exception is to have the detached.
Now, to have one house on that lot requires, if they were building that house today, requires how many acres? 1 acre?
2.
2 acres?
Yeah.
And how much?
1.78.
You have 1.78. But if you're adding another unit, aren't you gonna need more acreage?
That was the whole point of the variance.
Right.
That's why she's here.
How much more acreage do you need?
Point,
If they had 2 or more acres, they would not need the variance at all.
Okay.
They would have a proper sized lot. But since they're just slightly undersized, they need the variance. But if
Oh,
they
it's
were 2.
1.78 acres.
Yeah.
I just heard the 7, 8
No,
acres.
1.7.
That's-
it's 1 point.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So, you don't need to increase the lot size for the ADU, but they're undersized, so that's why they need the variance.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? There being none, I'm gonna open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time. I see you hiding under there. Come on. And provide us with your name. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
He got Dean worried.
Thought maybe there was a child or something back there that I missed.
Forgive me, I just had
that's
to.
fine.
A little humor. It's October. What can I say? Let the record indicate no one else from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Therefore, I bring it back to the board for any further questions. Now, once again, I want to repeat, the variance is for the lot size, because it's just slightly under, and special exception is for the detached. being detached. We'll vote for them separately. Any other questions? There being none, any closing comments, ma'am?
Just thank you for taking the time to hear these.
Very good, thank you. I'm gonna close it to the public, bring it to the board for discussion. Seemed reasonable, seems usable.
Once again here, if this is in RR1, these lots were created before the zoning ordinances require 250 feet of frontage and 2 acres.
I don't think
Built
so.
in 1975, this is 1975, whenever the subdivision was done out there. Is it? Could be wrong on that.
I don't know, we can go back
88,
and ask
yeah.
John Ganong.
Yeah,
and-
that's 88, so.
I don't know when the current regulation went into effect, but obviously the subdivision was created at a time frame that it would have gone through planning board, it would have been a proper subdivision at the time. This is not like one of those really old ones that were done,
No.
you know.
So is this building, it says built in 2020, is this building that's on there now that new?
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but they just constructed it.
Oh, really?
That's what made it so hard to get the maps. All of our aerials are from 2016 and the house is new.
Says year built, 2020.
Yep,
It was an existing lot of record.
I understand.
I think that whole section out there was built fairly recently. I don't think it goes back to before the ordinance came into effect. Those buildings are pretty new to me.
I can be corrected.
Yeah, I don't know, Roland.
In fact, I was amazed because years ago, when I was on the council, I went out there a few times, and it was pretty much forest space. But that street before Hillcroft, Garvin or something, you go down there, that's all built in.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, I don't know when this subdivision was done, Roland, but it certainly is of the time frame that it would have gone through planning board process, and at the time, these lots would have been the conforming size. But I don't know when we changed the requirements on the RR1 zone to have the bigger lots. I'm not sure when that occurred.
Any other discussion? Like to entertain a motion for the variance.
All right.
He's gonna do it.
Unless you want to, jump right in. I can share. I stammer and I stumble and I'm hard to,
No.
You wanna give it a shot, Marcia?
I can practice.
there you go.
You go ahead.
And I'm sure you're going to
I-
help me out, aren't you?
Jump on in, the water's fine.
So, we're just doing the first one, right?
The variance.
The variance, so I make a motion to, approve the variance 202021-0054 for the, approval of 17 Hillcroft Road, for the purposes of, allowing an ADU on a lot size that is less than 2 acres. And then we go into the whole rigmarole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The use requested is authorized within our documents. The request is not going to create undue traffic congestion or undue impair pedestrian safety because we're only looking.
I think you're reading the
That's for the
special,
special section, okay, sorry.
you're doing the variance, which is the other one.
This one. Okay,
Yes.
so let me see what they've got down here.
Section 6, 235-41.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have said that, shouldn't I?
I can add that in.
Would you do that, Karen? That would be wonderful, if you would add that. So the variance would not be contrary to public interest because there is no change to the neighborhood as stated in the application. The variance is in the spirit of the ordinance. That doesn't need any explanation, does it? Because the ordinance allows you to do these things, so.
It's within the spirit of the ordinance.
Granting the variance would do substantial justice because this homeowner needs the additional ADU to help in the caretaking of her parents. If the variance were granted, the value of the properties would not be diminished because, to me, I think it would enhance the property. I don't understand how it could possibly diminish the property. And there isn't any complaints from any abutters that they're in opposition to doing such. What else do I have to hit here?
A hardship.
Declare the hardship.
Hardship for,
As you're looking under section 5 where it states unnecessary hardship, they
Yeah.
filled out, it's either A or B. They completed section A.
yeah.
So you can kind of, if you want to just,
Oh, the hardship is because the property is undersized.
pre-existing. yes.
It's a pre-existing lot size of 1.788 acres, and therefore the requirement is 2 acres, so there is a hardship for that reason. Did I hit it?
And then you just need section 2, the proposed use is a reasonable one.
It is reasonable because it provides for independent living for the owner's elderly parents.
There you go.
Did I make it?
You did fine.
Okay, all right, great.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
We have a second. Discussion of the motion? There being none, all those in favor of the variance? And it passes. Now, special exception. The applicant, we need a motion for the application of 0055 SE 17 Hillcroft for the special exception. Anybody want to jump in?
Oh, let's get ready to go home. So, for application Z02021-0055, looking for a special exception here for 17 Hillcroft Road for a detached ADU. So, this is, article. Is that?
Section 7.
Yeah, it's-
Article 7, Section 235-41, subset A.
Perfect, and so we're looking for a 16 by 28 detached ADU that water and septic will be connected to the main house. This, is this request specifically authorized in this chapter? I'm gonna say
Yes, it
yes to
is.
that. And B, the requested use will not create undue traffic or congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. They're out playing volleyball in the street.
Well, based on the fact that it's a dead-end road
Yeah.
and you don't have a lot of thorough traffic there, it's just basically the people that live in the neighborhood travel there.
This ADU will be connected to the main house for utilities. It will not create excessive demand for police, fire protection, school, or solid waste disposal. Any special provisions for the use as set forth in this chapter are fulfilled? Is that true?
Yes.
We can say that. And we will not, the requested use will not create hazards to health, safety, or general welfare of the public, or be detrimental or out of use of character with the adjacent neighborhood.
It's gonna be built in the same character, I think she indicated, as the house on the lot, so it would be within the character of the neighborhood. Yes.
And this location is appropriate for the requested use because this will not impact anybody in the neighborhood. And it is consistent with the spirit and intent of the chapter and the master plan in that it provides housing and care for the family's elders.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. We have a second. Any discussion of the motion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everybody got the proposed meeting calendar?
You have the new calendar?
It should have been the last page of your,
I got it last month, didn't we?
maybe you did.
2022?
So we got one. Everybody check your dates. And those are due to holidays in January and February.
Yeah, they always screw things up.
And the
May is
solstice,
tax
huh?
season.
Everything got passed.
Did we get a new one tonight? Because I got this last month.
That should be the same, it should be the same one.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
We handed out last month.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay,
I do have one additional item, Steve, if I may.
absolutely. I was gonna ask you next.
The Master Plan Steering Committee has been meeting on a fairly regular basis the past few months. One of the items that was discussed was revising the ordinance on the ADUs. So you had your multiple applications tonight for the ADUs. There has been presented the changes, and I'll let you know what the changes are in just a second, but the changes have been presented to the planning board last month. They scheduled, this month, sorry, early this month. They scheduled a public hearing on the plan for the November 9th planning board hearing. And then after that, we'll decide. So essentially, what we are proposing, well, let me back up a little bit. The discussion at the Master Plan Steering Committee level around ADUs was started with the question of why haven't there been more applications for ADUs? And that was the question.
Who
And
asked it, if I may?
the answer from myself and the other members of my staff was, we get a lot of requests and questions about ADUs, but we also have a lot of people who, once they hear what they have to do to get an ADU, they don't want to go through the process. They feel it's too much. And so we talked about some of the things that people felt were too much. Don't take this personally, but they fear the zoning board like there's no tomorrow. So anyway, and then there's, as you know, the ordinance is, there's like 12 or 13 things under the ordinance that. So what we are proposing is to eliminate the need of a special exception. Now, there still may be some reasons for some of the ADUs to come to the ZBA if they don't meet the criteria in certain things. For instance, if they want to go larger, or they need relief from setback, or those kinds of things. So you're not completely out of the loop on this, but for all of the applications that you had tonight, just to use as an example, they would not need to come to the zoning board. We're going to allow it by right. Again, this needs to pass the planning board, and then it needs to go to the city council, and they'll have another public hearing. So, I mean, this is what we're proposing. We are increasing the allowable size slightly. That has been one of the reasons that's been cited by a number of prospective applicants in that they wanted something a little bit larger than 750 square feet. We are proposing up to 1,000. The ADU still needs to be smaller than the main house, but we are eliminating the provision of, if you've got a very large house, that you could have a very large ADU. We are capping it at 1,000 square feet. But if you had a 1,000 square foot ranch house, you would have to have a smaller ADU by at least, we don't specify, but at least a square foot smaller anyway. We are eliminating the need for the lot sizes. So for instance, the one we just heard about, they would be able to do an ADU in our, without getting a variance because the lot is too small. And our thinking on that was this way. In our last applicant's case, if they wanted to build a garage, they would not need a variance to do that. They could get a building permit, and as long as they meet their setbacks, they could build a garage of essentially any size they wanted to, and they would not need any ZBA action at all. Now, obviously, if they're not meeting setbacks, you know, that's a different story. But if they wanted to do an addition to their house, just a regular addition, they would not need a variance from the ZBA. So if they wanted to put a big shed in their yard, they would not need a variance. So we looked at this from a standpoint of a structure is a structure, depending upon what's going on inside it is not really what the issue is from a standpoint of if you agree with the goal here is to try to spur more ADUs in the city to act as affordable housing, increased availability of housing, which is one of the stated goals of the ADUs. Those are the major changes. There are a couple of minor little housekeeping things that we've also proposed, but the biggest change for you is that we would no longer need a special exception, and so these requests would not be coming to the zoning board unless there was something really wacky with it.
So how does the public voice their opinion on some of these items? Because where they have an opportunity here
Right.
to voice their opinion for or against, they now have that seemingly taken away from them in the public, and non-elected or appointed officials are taking that on.
You're right.
Where they have no recourse to go to their counselors or whatnot to advocate for or against added additions within their next door neighbors and stuff like that.
You're right. The way it's set up now with the special exception, the abutters get notified in every case. We had talked about, as part of the application process, when they put in their application, that we would inform the abutters that this application has been made, and that would give them an opportunity to at least call the office and voice their concerns or objections if they have any. That is currently not part of the proposal. However, I did mention it to the planning board, that was not part of the proposal as opposed to the way it is now. Whether that gets reinstated or not, I don't know. I think as a board or as individuals on the board, if you wanted to either go to the public hearing and raise that issue or write a letter, either way. Personally, I think that we should do that we should be notifying the abutters at the application as opposed to the approval part. You know, it's kind of too late sometimes.
Well, it doesn't sound like there's an approval process anymore. It sounds like if there's no regulations involved, it sounds like all they need to do is say, I need a permit to build a house. And it's a foregone conclusion that they're gonna have the right, if they have 2 acres, it'd be treated as building a garage. There is no discussion, there is no public input. They get a permit, here's your permit, and go build your ADA. So therefore, the public is not informed of this, so they would never know to call and say, is there something being built next door until after the permit's been issued and the ground's broken? Because we all know that people who are gonna start to do these things, they will not necessarily inform their neighbors of what they're gonna do because there's no need anymore.
Right.
And that would allow them to move ahead without any due process of the public. And therefore, that's why I'm saying here and speaking this in public, so that hopefully other people, if they do watch or hear this, will understand that the public is not being served here. The individuals are gonna be served versus the public in this situation.
Yep, you're right, Steve. I mean, there is an approval process, there is an administrative approval process, but it's not a public process, it's not a board process. As I said, my personal preference would be to have some form of notification go out at the application stage before approval, so that people have an opportunity to react to it. Whether the planning board will add that provision or not, I don't know. I certainly would encourage you all to voice your opinion.
Yeah, because actually, as I go through all the ADAs, I don't think the board's ever denied an ADA that I can remember.
Not from the standpoint of just creating an ADU. I think you're right, that I don't think you have denied any. I think there have been 1 or 2 that were denied for other reasons. They were, if I remember correctly, maybe not.
I don't recall any ADUs, because with a special exception, if the applicant meets the parameters for a special exception,
Yeah,
you kind of, I don't wanna say you have to prove it, but if they meet the parameters, it's,
right.
and with most of the ADUs that have come forth, and just to clarify, with what Dean's saying, with the proposal, it would go through, if it doesn't come to the board, if this were to go through, it goes through an administrative review, so it would go through, staff would be going through the parameters of, you know, what the ordinance is, just so it's clear.
I don't think any have been rejected for the special exception. I think there have been 1
I'm trying to think
or
with the
2
variance
for the
like-
variance
For a
aspect of it,
variance
because
aspect
they
of
either had a setback issue or they wanted to go larger, or I don't remember exactly,
Yeah.
but, you know, and that still may be the case. You know, if someone comes in and says, I want to do an 1,100 square foot ADU, then they're going to be here for a variance, you know.
And that's kind of
But
like
we
that
have had-
size also is, it's no longer accessory, it's putting two houses on the same lot.
I mean,
That's
yeah,
what it's coming down to.
It's an up to, yeah, it's an up to.
Because with a lot of the houses around here, if you look at them, are 1,000 square foot.
Yep.
And if you can put a 1,000-foot ADU on there,
ADU, accessory
Yeah.
dwelling unit, ADU.
that's like building two houses,
It could be.
and it's skirting the other side of the regulations then, because it's now, even though they're separated, it's two apartments,
2 living quarters.
2 living quarters.
Right. Right.
Which then does change the dynamics of a neighborhood.
It could.
Great.
Well, some are also the approved for two-family in certain zones.
That's the
Right.
proposal,
When is that meeting?
November 9th. If you like, I can send the actual language, proposed
Please.
language out to the board.
Please?
Will do. Yep. Yep.
And so Dean, that would be in all zones? is the
All
way-
residential zones.
All residential
Yeah.
zones.
Yep.
Well, what about lot sizes?
We would not require, what we would require would be that you have to have setbacks. You have to have the setbacks. But if you have an undersized lot, whether it's like Hillcroft or whether it's Pine Street, where you've got a very small lot, potentially, we're removing the provision that you have to have a conforming lot. A lot of the places in the community where people have proposed ADUs are in the older part of the city that most of the lots do not conform to the current lot sizes. They're too small for the most part.
So the people who are lucky enough to live in Shore Drive or Pine Hill Extension, they're all right.
Right. Right. Yep.
So what happens if they decide to condominiumize these two pieces?
You can't do that. You can't do that.
Okay,
You can't make it a condominium. The provision that the owner of the property needs to live in one of the 2 units, that is still in there. That's part of the state law as well. The other provision that we have in our ordinance, which is unique to Laconia, is, and we're not removing this, is if you cannot do short-term rentals in either unit of an ADU situation, whether it be the main house or the ADU. And that was based, and we put that provision in the short-term lodging ordinance 2 years ago, that you couldn't do short-term rentals in approved ADUs, because the ADUs by the legislature were defined as an opportunity for the homeowner to create some revenue in order to help pay taxes. And it was never anything in there. It was supposed to be, and to provide workforce housing. So it was those 2 provisions of the state law that was the main thrust of the legislature. And so we want to maintain that thrust in that this is designed to be, yes, there are a lot of them are aimed at being the traditional in-law apartment, but at some point in time, mom and dad are going to be gone and they become just rentals. But workforce-type housing as opposed to vacation housing.
So what would the rental contract be, a year? Or you say no short-term, or what is short-term
Short-
defined as?
Short-term is 15 days or less. That's under the short-term
Like vacation,
rental
yeah.
ordinance, it's
So
15
there could be
days.
90 days, 90 days, 90 days.
Yeah. So you could, you know, when we did the short-term rental ordinance, we were trying not to create an artificially long, you know, but we're trying to prevent the weekend and the, you know, 1 week type stuff, which has worked very, very well from that standpoint, you know.
But with this, with an ADU, you're looking at, are you gonna put a time frame in there or not?
We were not going to, but we were certainly at this point in time open to suggestions. We could put a,
Minimum?
yeah, you know, we could put some type of a 60 or a 90-day, just to kind of, you know, yep. we could
But
do
in
that.
something like that also, because so many of our healthcare workers or nurses and stuff like that live outside the area, but they come in for a month-long contract or 90-day contract work in the hospital. It's kind of some of these,
Yep,
you can imagine professionals like that renting something.
Well, I thought we allowed that, because don't we have Karen Janice's place over on Guilford Avenue?
yep, he's a short-term rental, but he has targeted his unit primarily for the
Yeah.
healthcare worker, yes.
So do we know what the contracts are for healthcare workers? I mean, if you're
In-
saying you're targeting,
No, we're not targeting in this case. In that one house, he was targeting.
no,
But
but
just for an example.
as an example, I'm just curious, are there contracts then around 90 days? Or, because I mean, we have some in our condo association, but it has to be 6 months
Yeah.
is the minimum.
Right, and that's the
'cause your
that-
association.
yeah, and your
Yeah,
association
right.
can still
We could-
create those rules, and your rules would take precedence over,
Right.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, I know that it's been very beneficial to have it a minimum of 6
Yep.
months, so that we're not getting
correct,
a lot of
Yep.
turnover.
yep, correct.
And if I may too, I believe, Mr. Mayhew, you asked about the number of units on the lot. An accessory dwelling unit, when you're looking at density, is not, we can't apply those density regulations for an accessory dwelling unit. Not like a two-family. It's actually part of the state RSA. So just kind of to clarify, I think you were kind of alluding to that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
When the legislature created the ADU law, RSA, it really was to codify the traditional in-law apartment, which we had an ordinance that allowed in-law apartments prior. But there were a lot of communities in the state that did not allow in-law apartments and did not have a process to create one. And so I think that was one of the things that the legislature was reacting to. And again, this is a proposal, this is going to public hearing. There may be others with reservations and concerns as well.
And that was November 9th.
Yes, sir.
Where is that gonna be here?
Right here, yep.
And you'll send that information to us, please?
Will do.
All right. Anything else?
And I
Any
have-
other questions
I
on
just
that?
have a question, but it may not be related to anything we normally discuss. Because on Saturday morning, my doorbell and my phone rang constantly because of the article on the front page of the Sun concerning the WOW Trail, where it's gonna be going through the entire residential area of Shore Drive from one end to the other. Do they have to get special permission to go through residential areas, or is that just something that they can do? And is there, if we don't have anything to do with it, do you know who I should go to? on that?
It will be, at some point in time, it will be a proposal before the city council to do that. The The Wild Trail Committee may also need to go to the planning board. It depends on exactly how they're going to do it. Right now, they're still in planning stages, but essentially, they're gonna be creating a bike lane. You know, whether it's within the existing pavement, just draw a line down the street, and every so often you paint the little, you know, bike symbol that you see from place to place. But this is definitely a proposal that will go to the city council.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, Mike, I know you wanted to go, but I wanted to ask that
Oh,
question.
good. I'm learning. I'm just sitting there soaking it up.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
All approved.
Second.
Who wants to throw a second in there?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Who else said?
I didn't want to jump the gun or any of
That
I
Belknap
think I was a shirker.
All of a sudden,
Yeah.
well, they're calling it an Opeachy loop, but it
I'm
goes all
sorry,
around
Opeachy
Winnisquam.
Loop, yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't touch Opeachy.
Yeah.
It's like.
Well, it goes up and